It was that year. I mean, there was a lot of upstarts in 1991, including a guy named Herb Abrams.
Oh gosh, you brought him up at just the right time. Here he comes to hijack another guest's airtime, John. How did you deal with this every week?
It
I
was
mean,
getting more.
seriously.
It was getting to the point where I didn't know what to do, and blatantly just kind of go off on the guy on the air. Because he would call in randomly. After I stopped doing business with him, he'd come on, and I'd let him on because I want to promote wrestling. And even though I had personal issues with him in regard to my time working for him, but he was getting increasingly desperate, and he kept calling in. And here's another one of those calls where he didn't arrange it in advance. He just called in.
He just called in out of the blue. Now, I understand your quandary. You were damned if you did and damned if you didn't. Because, yes, he was a wrestling promoter, and particularly in our area where his show was on every week, maybe he was going to come up with something important or something special. But most times he just
He
rambled.
lied most times.
Yeah. Okay. You're nicer than I am about it. Yeah. He would just go on and on about things that were totally unrelated to his promotion. Not to mention, Buddy Rogers is going to do this, and we signed this guy and we signed that guy. Did he ever actually sign a contract with anybody? I'm not so sure.
I don't think there were any written contracts, although he said, and who knows, he might have, who knows, but he was always signing somebody new.
Well, I don't know whether to laugh or cry, but I think we should listen to this next clip where Herb Abrams once again makes it the Herb Abrams show, folks. Here we go.
Got calls coming in like wildfire here. Let's get Wade Keller on the line. Wade, are you there?
Sure am.
And I'm going to bring Herb Abrams on. Herb.
Jonathan, how are you?
How you doing, Herb?
Very happy to hear you're on the air.
Are you really?
Absolutely.
Great. I heard that someone told me that you wanted to buy this time slot.
You and I spoke a few weeks back, and you had mentioned that there was a bit of a problem there at the station, and I suggested to you that if you wanted, that the UWF would purchase the time and maybe make you one of the alternate every week. We'd have a different host. Maybe you would host it one week, and Georgianne one week, Captain Lou Albano one week.
Yeah, but
maybe a bit of a change, but maybe a nice change.
Well, I don't think it would be. I don't know. It's up to my listeners to think if they would like a situation like that. I really don't know personally, but I've been doing my best and working my hardest to keep the show on the air. So I'm not into any corporate buyouts right now. Unless you wanted to sponsor the show, we would certainly love to get a UWF sponsorship, and we could push your merchandise here in your Beach Brawl tape.
Well, we could talk about that.
Okay, but I do want to give equal time to everybody here. And Herb, you have a show coming up next week.
Well, there was an article, John, that appeared in Friday's Gannett suburban newspaper locally in the Mount Vernon area that with the caption, "Cops Muscle Fight Fans for Charity." And it's a show that we're putting on for the PBA, which is the Police Benevolent Association, and its charity, Cops for Kids, where we're donating a substantial amount of the gate to the police department for the city of Mount Vernon. And we're bringing in some big names, and we're going to have fabulous matches and a great card, and we look forward to all the good people in that area coming out and see the UWF once again put on a fine show, and we welcome you to come there and your listeners.
Okay, you will have a show. Now, this was another promoter was going to do this, but the UWF has saved the show.
Well, unfortunately, in the wrestling business, John, as you know, everybody wants to be a promoter, and people think it's a real easy business, and as you know and I know, and it's not as easy as people think. They think they could just make a couple of phone calls, hire some wrestlers, and just go into the wrestling business. It doesn't really work that way. It's a business, and you've got to have a business background to run a business. And unfortunately, not to get into the details of it, but yes, the show was going to be put on by some people that are actually wrestlers, and they found out that their pockets weren't that deep, and it needed to be, it is a charity show. The UWF is not planning on making any money for it. We're donating the money for the kids.
It's going to be at Mount Vernon. Where in Mount Vernon?
It's at the Mount Vernon High School, which is located at 100 California Road, and tickets are reasonably priced at $8, and we're selling tickets for the kids for less than that.
Where do they go to get tickets? Do they go to the box office? Is there a number?
Well, they can buy the tickets are on sale at around 30 different outlets in the Mount Vernon area. One of the outlets is at the Vernon Video location at 264 Grampton Avenue. One is at 85 Lincoln Avenue. Tickets are on sale at Arturo Bakery. Those are some of the main ticket outlets. Tickets certainly will be on sale at the door. And what I'm excited about is that the main event of the night, and I do believe we have Brian Blair possibly coming on the air. I just spoke with him earlier. Will be two what we call good guys, if you will. Paul, Mr. Wonderful Orndorff, will be squaring off against B. Brian Blair. And these are two guys that grew up together in the state of Florida in Tampa and were very competitive. And I approached the both of them and said, guys, you know, I always wanted to know which one of you can out-wrestle one another. And we sat and talked about it, and they both finally agreed. They were reluctant at first to face each other, but they've finally agreed to meet each other in the squared circle. They know it's a charity, and it'll be interesting to see what the outcome of this match will be. And I know there's a lot of B. Brian Blair fans out there that used to follow him as one half of the Killer Bees, and I know there's a lot of Mr. Wonderful fans out there.
Okay, so we got Blair and Orndorff in the main event.
That's correct.
You know, Herb, I wish I had the time to bring a lot of these guys on, but I got about 15 minutes left here, and I wanted to inform the fans, you know, UWF is running this show next week, the 16th of November, Mount Vernon High School, 100 California Street.
That's correct. And of course, this latest newcomer who's been harassing the UWF, the Godfather, Tony Capone.
Heard a lot of good things about him.
Yes, well, he's a rather big-sized Italian fellow who claims he can defeat Steve Williams and wants a crack at the title, and he'll be there in the undercard in the semifinal facing Mario Mancini.
Okay. I've heard a lot of things about Tony Capone. He is on the air holding here. I wish I had the time to bring these guys on, Herb. I wish I could have spoke to you last night. I was out in the city trying to get my funds to do my show today. I was on the street corner with like a beggar.
Well, you should have asked your good friend Wade Kelly. He would have helped you out.
Wade, would you have done
Wade, is Wade on the air?
He's listening.
I'm here.
He's probably taking
Wade,
notes.
I like your new format in your publication. I rarely get it because no one sends it to me. I guess maybe I should send in whatever I need to send in to get copies of it. But when I do get it, I did see the new format, and I think it's quite good.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Goodbye.
There he is, Herb Abrams.
Oh, yeah.
And like he says, one of the major ticket outlets was this bakery.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Now, here's the big question I have. Did that show ever actually take place?
I believe it did, because I think Tony Capone was the guy that was actually promoting it with Herb.
So that really happened. Okay.
Yeah, that show actually took place.
And, earlier in the show, there was an American Wrestling Federation card that was being the noble experiment that was. Did that show ever take place?
Well, there's a big story about the AWF that we'll be covering in the month of December, because Gordon Scazzeri, who was a young man, he was I think he was in his early 20s, and he'd gotten an inheritance. He was a big wrestling fan, and he decided to become a promoter, and he booked shows. These first shows that we're going to be talking to him about in the December shows. I mean, it was one of the saddest stories probably ever in wrestling, because here's a kid who inherited a bunch of money, who blew it, and he brought in names like the Original Sheik, Adrian Street, Paul Orndorff, Stan Lane, Jim Cornette, Nikita Koloff. I mean, on and on and on. Eddie Gilbert was supposed to be the booker. I mean, it's just a sad story, because he passed away. He passed away actually in 2011 from kidney disease, and he was only 40 years old.
Oh.
But Gordon appears on the Pro Wrestling Spotlight. He comes in to do a big advertising campaign to promote the shows. I promoted it as best I could. He had Asbury Park and another venue in New York, which was eventually canceled. And he went up to Lowell, Massachusetts to do TV, because he had TV crews too. I mean,
yes.
It was an amazing, sad situation. I mean, some of the names he brought in were just some of his personal favorites as a wrestling fan. Yeah, and we're going to be getting into all of that stuff with the AWF, and we'll talk quite a bit about Gordon Scozzeri when we start covering December of 1991, because he's on 2 or 3 of the weeks in December. Yeah, so you'll hear him.
Well, they ran a show in New York City. I think it was on Channel 4, if I'm not mistaken, for a few weeks anyway. And it was so slick. Do you remember that TV show?
Oh, I remember the production. I mean, he had major production. He had, he had major, like almost like WWF type production crews in there. He blew so much money. And one of the craziest things about it was Dr. Mike Lano was there. And Mike Lano actually managed the original Sheik and Sabu during those TV tapings. And then on the same night, Mike comes out after he's managing the Sheik and Sabu, comes out as a photographer to take pictures. I mean, it was a bizarre, a very short-lived bizarre promotion with a bunch of bizarre things that happened. And we're going to dive deep into that when we get to December.
I can't wait for that, because all I know is I tuned in and there's Lord Alfred Hayes. Lord Alfred Hayes, who I guess just been cut by the World Wrestling Federation at that point.
The names that were associated,
huge,
including guys in from Puerto Rico. It was just, Kamala. I mean, you talk about Al Perez, Billy Jack Hayes. You talk about so many names that he brought in. The locker room was filled with all of these incredible stars from all over the world for these TV tapings. And the sad part of it is that the guy blew through this inheritance, or in some there's some stories he made a lot of money in the stock market, but it was more, from what I understand, an inheritance. But we'll get into all of that. It's just a sad chapter that year.
Wow, I'm looking forward to that. See, that's the long-term AWF story I did not know, so I'm going to look forward to those shows indeed.